Good morning, everybody. What's going on? Welcome back to Movie Mornings. I'm your host, Tom Martino, and today is a very special episode. I say that all the time, and they're never really that special, but it's just something that's cool to say, I guess. But either way, we're going to be talking about The Last of Us. It's kind of a mid-season overall review so far, and we are going to be getting into spoilers. I'm telling you, this show is so good that it just deserved its own podcast episode mid-season, and I'm just so excited to talk about it with Jose Espinel. And speaking of which, sitting here is Mr. Jose Espinel. Jose, how's it going, buddy?
Hey. It's good to be here. I'm glad to get into this mid-season review of the show with you. It's been amazing so far, and I'm just really glad that I'm getting to do this with you.
Absolutely, man. Yeah, same, dude. It's going to be a lot of fun, I think. And like I said, I mean, this does really deserve its own podcast episode. And also, guys, really quick, before we get started, please hit the like button below, subscribe to the channel, leave some feedback in the comment section, share this with your friends, hit the bell for notifications, do all that. And now we can move on to this, because I'll tell you, this is a show that makes me say, what the hell's an Obi-Wan Kenobi anyway? And it has no business being that damn good. But it really is, man. I mean, when you look at this, it's everything Obi-Wan should have done. This does, and in the sense of, we got this sort of dynamic between a guy who's trying to take a girl. She's cargo, right? And Obi-Wan kind of had the same task. And not to make this about Obi-Wan, but this really, the parts of that Obi-Wan failed at, for me, this is hitting. And so I'm really enjoying the show because of that. And also, it's just been a really faithful adaptation to the game so far for me. And I will only spoil the story up to the episodes we've seen. So for anybody that's worried about that, I won't go any further for what happens in the game. We're just going to focus on these episodes specifically. So it's going to be a lot of fun to get into for sure. And I'm excited about this. I think the best place to start really is just kind of at the beginning of this whole thing, because for me, that was like one of the most important things they had to nail in this show was Sarah's death. And they just did that perfectly. It was very close to the game, the way that scene played out, as it should have been. There are things about The Last of Us game storyline that I look at and I'm just like, they have to stay precise on that point. Otherwise, it doesn't work. But then there are other things where they deviate, and we'll get into a lot of that later on. But yeah, dude, I mean, I want to start with you in this. Let's just kind of stick with like the first half of the first episode. What were your overall thoughts? Because I know you're somebody who didn't play the game, so you're pretty new to all this, and I think that's a good. Yeah. I think it's cool we can get both perspectives here on the show. This is a lot of the reason I wanted to do this with you for sure, but as somebody who didn't play the game, just the first half of the first episode leading up to Sarah's death, I mean, what were your thoughts, man? I want to know what was going through your head,
I mean, for starters, to have someone like Pedro Pascal play Joel, the main character, I absolutely loved. I thought they nailed it, choosing Pedro Pascal. He's just such an amazing actor, and he is one of the big ones right now to talk about, because not only is he in this, he's got Mandalorian season 3 coming, and he's been in a lot recently, and he's just so good. Just the start of the show, just to get kind of like the beginning of his story and his life, and how it all started with his brother and his daughter. Was really cool to see how the three of them kind of coexisted together, and how their lives, how they lived their lives together, how they kind of gelled together, how they worked together, had like this dynamic going. I thought was really cool. And the daughter, she seemed, even though she loved her father and kind of depended on him, at the same time you could see that she was really also dependent of herself. Like, she was able to hold her own in this life. She was able to just kind of go wherever and be fine, and as long as she got back home at night, it was all fine and dandy, which is really cool to see, how dependent she was able to be without needing really much of Joel in there.
Yeah,
Um,
for
and
sure.
with the brother too, I mean, Joel and his brother Tommy, you could tell that they really have a very close relationship. Where some siblings might not have that, but you could tell in this one they have a really, really close relationship.
Yeah.
And you could tell that it's just them two, really. They don't have any other family to go on. So you could tell that, and it's a good thing that their relationship is where it is, because if it wasn't, then it would be a completely different story.
Yeah. I
Um,
I got a bunch I want to jump off of there because starting with number one, the first thing that I want to say about your point about Pedro Pascal is he is so talented, and this is to me the best role he's ever played. And
oh
that's
yeah,
I say that because it's the furthest from his own personality that I've seen him play. I mean, it doesn't feel like him at all. Mandalorian, definitely not either, but like, and I think like the thing about Mandalorian is the fact that, with Mandalorian, like he's great. I can't see anybody else play the Mandalorian for sure at this point because he's just made that role so iconic. And then here he is with Joel doing that again, but I think even like tenfold. And I think the thing that this show did for him as an actor, he's the biggest star in the world right now. Like overnight when this show happened, he really is. Like if you put him in a movie right now, he's bigger than Dwayne Johnson right now. I guarantee he's just that relevant,
100%,
and that's
100%.
and I think that's a lot due to the fact that I don't think Mandalorian did that for him because he's under a helmet the entire time, or you don't see his face most of the time. And so I don't know that people like made the correlation at first that this is the same guy. And then I think when people realized it is, they were like, wow, what a talented dude. Also proven to be a leading man in two big kind of, I don't want to say like, I mean, this one's a drama, Mandalorian's a little bit more fantasy, but they both are very action-packed things. And he has the movie star quality that he needs, but is also able to deliver range. It's not like, and no offense to what they did, because I mean, they set the precedence for what a movie star could be, but you look at like Arnold Schwarzenegger or Sylvester Stallone, they're playing the same characters in their movies most of the time.
Yeah,
Pedro
they're like that
Pascal
kinda,
is
they're kind of
versatile.
they're kind of that, yeah, they're kind of that typecast
Yeah.
where that one actor plays really like the same role every time.
Yeah.
Whereas you've got Pedro Pascal, who's done Game of Thrones, he's done Mandalorian, and now he's doing Last of Us. So he can really play.
He's a very
anything.
versatile leading man.
Very, yeah,
And that's
100%.
rare to have that quality where
Not just a versatile, but does every single role to perfection.
Yeah.
I mean, like he's just so good at being such a versatile actor.
Yeah.
That it makes sense that they chose Pedro to play Joel. And from clips that I've seen, Pedro looks like Joel from the video game too.
I think so.
He looks really similar, and so I'm honestly loving Pedro Pascal in this show so much.
Yeah, and I think that him looking like Joel, and he definitely does. I agree with you. I think that he's very close. I think that him looking like him wasn't as important to me as him capturing the qualities, but it was just a bonus that they were able to get both. Because with Ellie, on the other hand, Ellie is capturing the spirit of Ellie, but she doesn't really look like anything like Ellie in the game. But it's fine because Bella Ramsey is also such a great performer, which
she's, oh my gosh, yeah, she's so talented too. She's gonna be one of those, like, I mean, she kind of already is, but she's gonna become one of those that like gets casted in like everything now. Like,
absolutely.
She's out. I mean, she was good in Game of Thrones, the scene that she was in, but now in The Last of Us, since she's playing a much bigger role, she's definitely gonna be casted in a lot more now. I mean, she's what, like 19 years old, 20 years old?
19 years old, yeah.
Yeah, she's so young.
Insane.
Like, she's got such a bright future ahead of
Agreed.
her already, just from this Last of Us show alone.
Agreed. And like I'm not saying she's got the movie star quality Pedro has. I mean, she's a phenomenal actress.
She definitely,
without a doubt.
I feel like she will get there eventually.
But
she is only 19.
But she's definitely a phenomenal actress and at the level of Pedro. I mean, really, she is. And I do.
I mean, yeah, their chemistry together is just, it's one of the best that I've seen on TV for sure.
It really is. I still feel like you put her on a movie poster now. That's different than if you were putting her on a movie poster 6 weeks ago, And so
Oh yeah,
like
no, shoot, yeah.
that's it would make a huge impact. And I mean, even same with Pedro, though, like we were saying, but I don't want to jump into the second half with Ellie just yet because I wanted to jump off more of that first half of this episode.
I was
Which,
gonna say,
go
I was
ahead.
gonna say because I wanted to talk about Sarah's death because
Yes,
that got me so emotional. Like I could feel like Joel's pain in that. Like oh my gosh,
100%.
man, I was like because I was gonna say that the one thing that I love about Pedro is that mask or no mask, you can tell what emotions he's feeling, and you
Absolutely.
feel it. You
He's
feel
got
it
that
so like
quality. It's rare.
oh, it is so rare, and he's one of those actors that has it. And
Mhm.
oh my gosh, he delivered in just that one scene alone. I
Yeah.
was like, yeah, this is yeah. Pedro was literally the guy for this because the emotions he delivered in that scene when his daughter died right in front of him was just so convincing, and I could feel it myself. It's almost like I was in his shoes and I was the dad. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like it made me think like, crap. What if I was in that situation? My daughter was dying right in front of me, and I had to leave her because she's dead. It's like,
Yeah.
man, it was just so raw and great.
Yeah, I definitely want to talk about that a little bit more, but I do want to take it back just a little bit because one of the things I wanted to point out, because you were talking about Sarah and, how big of an impact she had. Number one being, they gave her so much more backstory here than they did in the game. In the game, you really start out when all the shit hits the fan. And here in the show, you really didn't. You started with her before. You got to see her and her dad just being, living a normal life for a little bit, which I love that addition. The other thing that this did for Nico Parker, the actress, is it showed that she's also very talented and somebody
Oh yeah,
we'll be seeing a lot more of. I guarantee it after this
for
because
sure.
she
Yeah.
just one episode, half an episode, really, she just showed so much of an impact, which was incredible. So that does lead me into the death, which that was one of the things that they just got so spot on from the game too. It just had to be that precise. Otherwise, I just think if you don't start out that precise, then I think you're going to lose a lot of fans because I know a lot of fans are like, that's a moment that just has to happen in the show. And
And I
they
remember
did
you
it
telling me
very
too
well.
that even though you played the game, you still felt the emotions in the like. It was like you were
Yeah.
watching it for the first time. Yeah.
Well, not only that, and you know what's going to happen when, Sarah's getting in the truck and Tommy and Joel are taking her. And even in those moments, I was on the edge of my seat, but I knew what was happening. But somehow the show was just executed that well and so to a T.
Honestly, like the quality, like yeah, I was gonna say like the cinematography of this, the shots in this
Yeah.
show. I mean, all of it just is just, and not only that too. The infected in this, they did so well. Like they're
Yeah.
so scary and so convincing. Like it's yeah, it's just so good.
Yeah, and I think the sort of practicality that they use with them, I mean, is what's making a huge difference between I think what a movie version of this would have been. Because you take this over to Hollywood, I think they would have gone CG all the way. I'm not saying that's definitely going to be the case, but I think that with TV, you just have this extra room to play. And also because you do have a smaller budget, you're not playing with as many VFX. You're going to hire actors. And that's exactly what they did, which was a difficult task. I can guarantee
But
it because
I feel like definitely turned out better than if they were to
yes,
CG a
yes,
bunch. Yeah.
absolutely. Because that you have to get it right, man. And I think like, yes, CG offers you flexibility in a certain way, but it does take away the realism of it. And this just always felt real.
It's like with Vecna and Stranger Things.
Yeah,
He's not CGI. He's all practical, and like that's very convincing and scary.
yeah,
And doing it here with these infected, it has the same effect. Like you can, there, it's just so real. You know what I mean?
yeah,
It just feels so real.
yeah. And when when Sarah ultimately gets shot, you do feel the panic in the dude that has to carry out that task for sure. And you understand immediately why it was done. I mean, it's wrong. I'm just saying it's dead wrong, but you understand why it was done because this thing got out of control so fast. Which I think what makes that even scarier of a concept is the fact that like if this fungus, the cordyceps, were to be able to infect humans, this is pretty much how it would be. Luckily it won't or it can't, but according to the data. But if it did, it would probably be this bad and get out of control this fast.
It'd probably get even worse.
Yeah.
They probably start bombing areas just to try and get rid of the infected as
Yeah.
quickly as possible.
But the second half of this episode, I mean, we take this big time jump, obviously, after Sarah's death.
Was it like 20 years
20
later?
years. 20 years, which
Yeah.
is exactly how it is in the game. They just played with the years differently because they wanted it to line up with 2023. So I like that. I mean, it was a
Our
cool
year.
change. Yeah, our year, exactly. Just to scare us a little bit more. But they did a good job with that, honestly. And Joel, this is the other thing I loved, is because we've seen when they try to age somebody and it's overdone in a practical sense. And here it's not overdone. You definitely buy that this is Pedro Pascal 20 years later. 56 years old is what he said.
They like whites in his beard and his hair. Like
Yeah.
it wasn't over. Like
It was subtle.
They didn't give him wrinkles. Or
Right.
Like they didn't overdo the aging. Yeah, they made him look like he's 56.
It was subtly aged, and I think that
Yeah.
that's another great thing about hiring an actor like Pedro Pascal, who's just really only getting younger in real life, is that he's aging very well in his real life. So you have to get somebody
yeah.
like that to buy that when they age, they're not going to age like some other people age. He's going to age just like he's going to look. Still going to look good. Essentially,
Right,
I mean,
yeah.
you can definitely see that this is taking a toll on him. But he's still a handsome fellow. Like, you need somebody like that to be able to do that realistically as they did, and as practically as they did, which I just thoroughly enjoy about his casting, which that just wouldn't have been the case with a lot of other people. And I think they knew that. I think they were very cognizant of that and smart about it, which I enjoyed. And I also like that he plays older, and again, I know we praised his talent a lot, but he really does.
He does play. He plays like he has back problems. Like
Yeah.
his legs don't work as well as they used to.
It's all these subtle little movements.
Yeah.
Like I remember just like even just the way, like a simple scene, just the way he was walking down the sidewalk, I realized what he brought to just something as simple as that. You're seeing something very different than what he looked like walking in the first half, and I love that
Right.
from him as an actor. I know it's just such a subtle little thing, but I think that those little nuances are important to have, so you
sure.
really buy into it. And you really feel his age because of that. Even if you don't notice he's doing that extra little bit, like, you're just going to feel it automatically or subconsciously. And then, you get introduced to Tess in this too, which I really enjoyed, because the way that they did this Robert thing was very different in the game. She's being interrogated by Robert, and it's pretty much the other way around in the show, because in the show, I mean, there's a mention of her kind of being screwed over by Robert, but in the show, they definitely have more of an upper hand on Robert in the game than they do in the show. In the show, it's like they did make Robert a little bit more threatening here, but a little bit, but they still kept it to where he was like threatening to Tess, but we know that Joel can kick his ass had they found him.
Well, yeah, I mean, Joel can kick really anyone's ass.
But it's just such a bigger deal the way it's done in the game, and I don't mean that as a bad thing. I thought it was a smart choice to cut it down for TV, because the game it's such a playthrough type deal with Robert and everything, and you just can't do that on TV, and it was just so much smarter. The other thing is, in the Robert stuff, there's a lot of death, and one of the things I love about the show is in the show version, they make every death feel a lot more grounded. Like, every death has to matter, and that's something that's been carried through, which is another reason it was so smart to just chop down the Robert stuff. And I thought it was just a great deviation. Also, the other thing I really liked here is that they do show Joel having to survive. They do keep the spirit of the survival horror game in that sense, but because this guy's selling drugs, which they didn't have that in the game. That wasn't a part of it.
To a Fedra agent. Yeah.
Right. And the Fedra agent does come back up in the game, but it's not personalized. There's not a personalized relationship like they set up in the show, which I love that.
Oh, yeah, that was great.
And because it is so much more effective. And the thing that I love here so much is the fact that Joel and Tess are a love interest. It's subtle,
Yep.
but it's there. And in the game, it's also subtle, but it's there. And I like that they kept that, and then they carried that over. Just maybe a little bit more here, but it wasn't overdone. They still kept that in check. It wasn't like the love story was the most important thing. Like
Right.
we didn't have to see them, we didn't have to
Make
see like
out
two
or
sex
like
scenes. Which
yeah.
I'm not saying that to be a prude. I'm saying that because like I've seen so
That's
many
not the point
shows
of
take
this.
the
Yeah.
focus where it takes the focus because they feel like they need it.
And that's also not the focus of this show,
Right.
which is yeah. I mean, maybe one wouldn't have harmed the show.
No, but
Um,
I
but
like that it shows what it
I feel like
needs.
also yeah. I was about to say I also like that they didn't show like a bunch of kissing or a bunch
Right.
of well actually they didn't show any, but yeah, I'm just glad they didn't show any of that kind of stuff. They kind of just left it to us to assume that they're in a
Yeah.
romantic relationship, but that they're also trying to get the hell out of there and
Yeah.
get to Tommy, which is Joel, Joel's brother, who's
Yeah.
out there. So yeah,
Well, they know, and that's the thing of like when we're talking about like love scenes in the show, there is one that happens later on that we'll get to that I just think adds to it, as opposed to I think a Joel and Tess one just would have taken away from the moment. The other thing I think we had to understand about their relationship is I just don't think Joel's in that place. I think he needs a companion, but I don't think he's in a place of like just he's not wanting to get married. He's not in
yeah,
that kind of
yeah.
place, and I think that the subtlety adds to that a lot. I think he needs a companion, and that's about it. And in the game, they just feel
He
like
just
partners.
he just needs someone to be with him because he doesn't want to end up alone for
Right,
the rest of his life.
right, and that's going to parallel something that Ellie says later on in the show,
Right.
and I want to talk about that heavily too. But yeah, dude, and so they end up going to find Robert in the game. Tess kills Robert. Robert's already dead. They play this car battery angle here, which I actually really kind of dug. I thought it was interesting because Joel does end up getting a car battery from Bill later on in the game, but that's about the extent of a car battery. Here it's like he's got a mission to kind of want to go see Tommy. So this I liked how they played this. They made the car battery just so much more significant by just playing this little role. But I like that there was a shootout between the Fireflies and Fedra, which Merle Dandridge plays Marlene in the show, and she also plays Marlene in the
Also
game.
voices.
Right.
Yeah.
Which I think is also really cool. It was a nice little carryover because she's in real life, it made a lot of sense to me because in real life, she's actually one actress that aged into the character that she voiced when she was younger. And so I thought that was a real smart decision to just keep that. Why not?
Yeah, I remember seeing interviews with a lot of the cast members
Yeah.
talking, and that was something that she said in the interview is that like she feels like she's aged like the character from the video game has to the show now, which is why she was glad that they chose her to
Yeah.
play this character again in the
Yeah.
show. Yeah.
And you can't really do that with Troy Baker for Joel. He's too young. And Ashley Johnson's too old to play Ellie.
Ellie, right,
That's
yeah.
the thing. And I do say voice actors, but they really wore more than that because they use motion capture to do that for the game. So
Right.
they were I want to give the
I was
actors
saying
for the game all the credit. Yeah.
when it comes to video games, it's different because, like for example, with Jedi Fallen Order and Jedi Survivor, Cal
Right.
Kestis, it's different. They use movement captures
Right.
with with the actors themselves. So when it comes to voice acting for video games, it's a lot different than for movies because
Yes.
in movies they're animated characters.
Right.
They're not like they don't take actual movement. So
Right.
it's I got to give credit to voice actors for video games because
Yeah.
they definitely do a lot more.
Yeah, no, I mean Troy Baker and Ashley Johnson are excellent as their respective characters, but they'll be the first to tell you there's no way we could have done it in the show. It just wouldn't have worked. So, but anytime you can carry somebody over, you do it, and that was the
By
case
all
with
means,
Merle
yeah.
Dandridge
Yeah.
for Marlene. She was the perfect age, so why not? And I think that it was very smart to just do that because it also shows that because Craig Mazin is the one doing the series, right? So I mean, it's him and Neil Druckmann who created the game, but it shows that even like Craig Mazin has a respect for the fans, like just right from the get go to put something like that
and
in
he
the
just
first episode.
has a respect for the game too, and
Exactly.
it shows that he actually loves the game and cares
Right.
about the game and
Right.
wants to do the best possible for the show version of the game.
Right. And for many other reasons too, not just that, but that's just one of the big ones that I can think of that just really stands out to me that was very smart. But I also like that even Ellie I like, and it carries on throughout the show, this sort of theme of like every character we introduce, we want to give them more story than you saw in the game. And Ellie was no exception to that either, because right from the jump, we don't see Ellie so early on where she's chained up and all that in the game, right? Like that was something that they added, and I like that the show just suddenly it just becomes this sort of companion piece with the game where we have more to think about now when we're playing the game. Just in one episode alone, we're getting these little nuances and details. And I'll be honest, I wasn't sure how to feel about Bella Ramsey's Ellie. It's a different approach, not a bad approach. Different approach. It captures the spirit later on. But at first, I didn't think she was doing a bad job. I had no complaints about the performance. It was one of those things where I was like, I need to see more. I didn't get the. I knew Joel was going to be. I knew Pedro Pascal was good, but yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I thought I liked it when she was counting, when they had her count from 1 to 10.
Yeah, it was funny.
Like she's man, she's just so funny.
Absolutely.
I honestly, for me, someone who hasn't played the game, to get different perspectives, I actually from the get-go started, like, I fell in love with Bella Ramsey's Ellie straight away, just because of the comedy that she brought, the seriousness, the badassness that she was like, I don't give a fuck, I'll try and kill whoever I can that gets in my way. I absolutely loved it, and I was like, I already know that I'm gonna like Ellie from here on out.
And I reckon for the folks
I fell in love straight away.
I reckon for everybody that didn't play the game, that was the case. I think for me, I had this attachment to the Ashley Johnson rendition, and it was like such an adjustment, I think, is what it was. But I got there.
That's why, folks, you're getting two different perspectives here, folks.
No, 100%. It was just an adjustment. It wasn't a bad performance by any means, just not enough there. And so but then we start to get into the apartment scene, which was just like perfectly taken out of the game when they go through the apartment and her trying to figure out the code for the radio, which was kind of a new aspect with the radio. I like that. It created good comedy there. I mean, definitely with her, and the wake me up before you go joke was great. Her trying to figure it out, but it was so Ellie. That was the most Ellie I saw in this episode, was that right there. And the watch is broken. I mean, that line was straight out of the game. I mean, everything there was out of the game except for the radio. And I like that because that really did set up Bill and Frank very early on. And I like that. Again, they just keep doing that where everybody's kind of planted in a little bit earlier than they would have been in the game. And it gives them more development. That does make a lot more sense now. Yeah, 100%. Yeah. And I love that so much. And so Tess comes down her back, and she's like, yeah, it's time to go. And I like that when they get over to when they come out of the thing, I like that Ellie's just so excited to be outside, because you buy that. You buy that she's been kind of secluded most of her life. And so when she gets outside, it's like it's such an exciting thing. And, they're actually going outside the wall as well, or outside the QZ, which is, something new for her, I think. And so that was a real nice aspect, honestly. I like that they added that, which was also in the game as well, but it was carried over nicely here.
And then the scene that really also got me too, which I know is one that a lot of people talk about, was when the Fedra agent stops Tess and Joel and Ellie, right, and starts scanning them all, and then goes to scan Ellie, and then Joel's like protecting her, and then he literally kills the Fedra agent for Ellie. It almost reminds me of like what he would have done for Sarah to help, because Sarah died, and it's like he's being a father to Ellie in that scene specifically. It's like, this is what I would have done for Sarah. I would do anything. I would have done anything for Sarah. So now I'm gonna do anything for Ellie. It's almost like in that instant, like in just that one instant, it's like he was being a father to Ellie, and Ellie saw the same thing. Is like, wow, okay, so this guy will literally do anything for me.
100%.
That was a really cool scene.
That was a nice addition. So the scene itself is in the game. It's actually like 2 or 3 Fedra agents, and as I said, they don't have this like personalized relationship like Joel and the Fedra agent. So that was a really nice touch there. The other thing that was a nice touch is it's just a quick little subtle flashback to him thinking about his daughter. I'm not going to end up in this situation again, is kind of what he's thinking to himself. And they say that without dialogue, which is also fantastic. And also, like, the other thing about that that's great is, like you said, this is an addition. This is a good addition. You see Ellie wanting to be defended or liking the idea of somebody defending her, which was just, it was an incredible addition. You know, they didn't really have that in the game, even though I think it's probably in her mind in the game. It's just not shown through this like facial expression as Bella Ramsey portrayed so well here. And then they got to go. And then you get into episode 2.
Well, then they find out they find out then and there that that she was bitten.
Right.
Past tense, and they think that she's infected, and then she ends up saying, "Oh no, this happened like weeks ago or whatever." So that's when like I guess they kind of find out, or they kind of thinking maybe she's like the cure or whatever.
Yeah.
But they still have their doubts in that moment.
And then you have the second episode though, and what I loved about that is because in the game, and I heard the writers talk about this, in the game, you just kind of keep going. You pull an all-nighter with these characters. But I like that they said in the show, they have this ability to like start and stop. In other words, you want the audience to buy these characters more, the people that are unfamiliar with them. So you want to show them sleep for once, which you don't really get in the game. Because in the game, it's a constant moving thing.
It's like they're not human. They don't have to sleep.
So that was a nice touch. But the other thing I loved in that episode was the cold open with the woman and the scientists like coming in to see the cordyceps for the first time and see it infect a human. And just the face that she has on her where she's like, you could just tell that she's in disbelief of what she's seeing. Like,
she's basically like, you just gotta nuke the entire state.
Right. She's an important scientist, and you could tell she's seen a lot of shit. But when she saw this,
but this was like something she's never seen before in her life.
This did her in, This was like the one, and she was like, "Yeah, I'm gonna go home. I'm gonna be with my family. Forget my job because we're screwed." And
just literally kill all of us.
That explains the threat of this thing. The other thing I love that was such an addition in this episode was this new introduction of tendrils. In the game, you get infected by spores, but I like this choice because to me anyway, it really shows that the actors can give a better performance without putting gas masks on all the time to go through these spores. So for TV, that was just another idea that made so much sense to me, which I loved.
Even though Pedro Pascal can perform with or without a mask.
100%.
But yeah.
But
I definitely enjoy it more with because not every actor is like Pedro Pascal that can act with a mask on.
Right.
So yeah, to make it with these like tentacles coming out of their mouths, it definitely gives it allows the actors and actresses to give a better performance.
I think so, 100%.
It also almost gives it a more grounded way of being infected because we've had movies before where the infection is through the through breath, like in the air with stuff being infected in the air,
right?
And we have diseases like that in real life, anyways. So to see something more grounded and more almost humane also adds to the suspense and action and thrill of the show.
Mm-hmm. And there's a conscious effort, even in the game, to try to separate the infected in this show from zombies.
Right.
Because this is fungus based. This isn't virus based.
Right.
And that's what I love too. And so it just made it so much smarter to use the tendril to make that distinction for the audience that's new to this thing. And also the thing I loved is like this episode does for Ellie what the first episode did for Joel. The first episode sold you on Joel. This episode had to sell you on Ellie. But while moving the plot forward at the same time, obviously, like it did that so well. And that was so impressive to me. And this is the episode that really sold me on Ellie. And it was within the first 10 minutes. It didn't take much time at all.
When she went, That was so
amazing.
funny.
All the comedy here was great
Yeah.
between with her and Joel, and that relationship just got solidified for me here, or at least in terms of like these two are going to play off each other very well. Not only that, though, separately they're just great as Joel and Ellie. As separate people, I did want to see more of their relationship unfold, but obviously we get into that later.
Mm-hmm.
But this was a good start. It got the ball rolling with these two. And what I really enjoyed here was Pedro Pascal. I like that this is an episode for Ellie, but it's also showing it's much more of a character study on Joel than the game ever was, because it's showing how broken this man is and how
Oh yeah,
damaged he really is through this episode. He's cold.
for
He's
sure.
cold with Ellie. He
He's
does.
ice cold.
He really is. And
Because at this point, he just sees her as cargo.
yeah,
He's just trying to get her to to the Fireflies and get his car battery and get
yeah.
the hell out of here.
Don't get me wrong. He's broken in the game, but in the game he keeps his manners about him still. In this show, that's gone. That humanity is gone from Joel. He just wants to do what he's got to do and get the hell out of there. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
He wants to do his quick job, get her to where she needs to be. And he's even hesitant to do even that at this point because of, her being infected. He doesn't think she has a future. Tess does. You can kind of see that throughout the show. She definitely believes that Ellie might be the actual cure for this thing.
Well, yeah, because she, I believe it's in this episode where Ellie gets bit again or whatever, and she rolls up her sleeve or whatever, shows that
Yeah.
Ellie isn't infected because it's basically cured again. So it's like, look, she's the answer. So get her out of here and get her to where she needs to go.
Yeah, 100%. This episode also, one of the other things I really liked is it goes back into the fact that they could start and stop. It gave a lot of breathing room that you didn't have in the game. In the game, like I said, it's an ongoing thing. So a lot of the dialogue and the conversation that they were having in the beginning, that was happening while you were walking, while you were going on your journey. This, they stopped a minute to have a talk, to have this conversation like human beings would, not game characters, and so that was just so important to me. The other thing I liked about this, which is really interesting, is I feel like in the game, and this really built out Tess for me too, and made me like this version of Tess more than the game version, because what I love about this is a lot of the dialogue between Joel and Tess, it's flip-flopped. I noticed this between the first and second episode. And I think what they're trying to get across is Tess is the more cold-hearted one in the game than Joel. And I like that they reversed those roles because they did want to make this more of a character study on Joel, and that's why they flip-flopped a lot of the dialogue, I think, and did that vice versa between the two. Until about the fact that Tess gets infected, then her real humanity comes out in the game. But here, she's got the humanity the whole time that Joel has in the game. A little bit more. He's still broken in the game again, but the lines are different. Like, I like that they changed the roles just ever so slightly there. And then what ended,
And the way this episode ended was just
right.
it was greatly shot, man. But it was also creepy at the same time, seeing that infected go up to Tess and try and just
Right.
fully convert her, but she's got the lighter trying to light it up and blow them all up.
Right.
And it's so that she's gonna do it, but at the same time, it's like, is she actually going to be able to successfully do this? Because it has you on the edge of your seat the whole time.
Yeah.
Which is so great.
Well, I like that they used that opportunity to really show the tendrils are what infects you, because in the game, they gave it probably the equivalent of a disturbing moment that they could, while still showing you that this time we're using the tendrils, because in the game you go through the building with Ellie to escape, and also in the game it's Fedra that kills Tess. Or she's infected. That's still a twist that they got down, and that was pretty exact. But infected don't run into that building. Fedra does, and Fedra shoots her. And you have to try to sneak around Fedra in the game. I thought this was a smart choice because it showed the difference now that in this, we're going to see the tendrils are going to be what infects her. But also, not only that, at the same time, it's just as disturbing as walking out of that room in the game and seeing her get shot down. It's the same amount of disturbing that they kept here. But I do want to go back a little bit because you were talking about the visuals. This episode was so cinematically beautiful all the way through.
Oh my gosh, yeah, the buildings with like the grass
Yeah.
or like the moss on it. Yeah, like and the lighting of it was just so beautiful. It almost looked like the Amazons if like a futuristic city was built in like the Amazons. It was so beautiful. We should absolutely love this. The scenery was just so beautiful.
We should probably shout out and credit the show's directors too. I mean, Craig Mazin directed the first episode, and then Neil Druckmann, who created the game, directed this episode. And damn, I thought he did so well with live action for his first time doing it. And that was, I mean, it was actually really impressive. And I thought it was perfect to have him do the one that introduced the clickers as well, which added this whole new layer of suspense.
Yeah, and those are even creepier. Jesus Christ. Yeah, those clickers are something else.
Yeah.
I want to give credit to the actors who play the clickers and infected because they just do such an incredible job.
Absolutely.
Such a convincing job of playing these really scary infected people.
Yeah. I love too, by the way, that the designs of the environments are taken straight out of the game. The Capitol building, the museum, the place where Tess ends up, getting killed. Like all those buildings straight out of the game. I mean, they just designed them straight out of the game. It was incredible the way they did that. Also, excuse me, Joel kind of, standing in a corner trying to be stealthy. Man, I felt his pain as somebody who played the game because I was there. I've done that. I had to do that with the clickers. It was harsh. It's tough to sneak around those little bastards, and you understand how much of a pain in the ass they are if you played the game. But the show did a really good job emitting that same feeling, or bringing out that same feeling for even somebody new who hadn't played the game. It's there for you, and that's so impressive to me. But I love also that there's this like underground network with the fungus that they explain, right, with the tendrils. This is a whole new element that wasn't in the game. Like you can step on a fresh patch of cordyceps essentially, and if it runs down this underground network to like all these other infected, like they showed on the ground there, which is why they ended up. I like that it gave them a reason other than that area is blocked off like it would be in the game. They gave them a reason to go through that museum and run into the clickers. That was realistic for a show, and that was so cool to me. But also just the fact that like fungus really does run underground. It really is kind of this underground network, and that was so realistic and perfect to do it that way. So I love that idea as well. That was a perfect element. But at the end of the episode, Joel's just kind of cold, man. I mean, Ellie's clearly upset about the decision.
He gets even colder.
Yeah.
After Tess does what she does.
Yeah.
It's like he gets into like he just goes even colder and darker and just more intent on getting Ellie to where she needs to be so he can just get the hell out of there. He wants nothing else to do with Ellie. He just definitely just wants to get out of there and do what he needs to do.
Yeah, 100%, dude. And it was just a real smart decision to keep that coldness about him. I think it starts to break a little bit earlier in the game, and here they keep it, and I thought that was important.
Yeah, because not only has this guy lost his daughter, but now also his romantic partner. Like he's really got no one left now. He really all he's got left is Tommy, and he just wants to get there as fast as he can.
Yeah, and I don't even know if at this point he knows he's going to go see Tommy the second. I think that at this point he doesn't know what to do. I think he's like...
I think at this point he also doesn't even really believe whether or not Tommy's alive or not.
Right.
Because, I mean, I feel like he's like, all right, Tommy might be alive, but what if he's not? Like, who
Right, there's always that possibility.
Exactly, yeah. Yeah, and I feel like that's always running through his mind.
100%.
Throughout this journey.
But the other part of that is he's taking her to see Bill. That's where he's going. And he's going to see if Bill can do anything. That's the first place he's going to take her, which is just a fascinating decision to me, even though that was the one that was made in the game. But let's talk about Bill and Frank here because...
Oh, my God. Is that this? That's this episode, right? 3?
That's 3, which is my second favorite of the series so far.
I'd have to say the same because and the fact that, Joel and Ellie are really not in this one. The fact that it's focused on these two guys, Bill and Frank. I really, really enjoyed I mean, obviously, I love Joel and Ellie in the show. You know, Pedro Pascal and Bella Ramsey, but diverting from them and getting this completely separate, it was
It
almost
was
like its own show almost,
it was a really
like
bold
mini
choice,
episodes.
but one that worked. You know, I
Oh,
think
it worked. I
ultimately.
really liked seeing what this friend, I guess, became friend of Joel, but this guy, what his life was like this whole time when the infection started, getting
Right.
to see what he, you know, what he was, what he became, how his life changed when Frank came along, um, and just yeah, how it all unfolded. You know, it was really great to see.
Yeah, the other thing I wanted to point out here too, really quick, is with Joel and Ellie, when we do see them on the screen, number one, Ellie kind of putting that thing out of its misery was kind of crazy. That it was like a half clicker that she found, like that was like
Well,
stuck.
and it was yeah, and she was like studying at first. She was like opening up his forehead to see like what was in there,
It was
and
a
then
little
you know,
curiosity.
and then just ending it. Like that was cold. Like you could tell right then and there that Ellie just does it. She gives zero fucks.
It was, but on the same hand, you can kind of see her thought process, because when she's slicing that forehead, in my mind, she's saying, "There's nothing in there anymore. There's not any
Yeah,
human left."
it's just fluff.
Right. And so I could take it out. And then so she takes it
That's
out.
what I mean. Like she gives no fucks. Like she's just so cold as well.
But I also like that, because that was an addition that was not in the game. But I what I really loved also was the Mortal Kombat's game that she found, the arcade game, because
Mm. Yeah, I
yeah,
remember hearing you say in the review of that in the game it was
it was a Devil Eyes, or Devil Knives was the
mm-hmm.
game, which was like this Mortal
Yeah.
Kombat ripoff. I like that they were actually able to use Mortal Kombat here. Something that the audience watching the show can probably relate to a little bit more, but the dialogue was so similar, man. I mean, they got that so spot on from the game. But the deviation here, and this episode deviates definitely the most from the game, because Bill is somebody you do actually meet up with. The arcade game, that building where they find that's in Bill's town, or where Bill lives. You and Bill and Ellie go on this mission. You fight some infected. You end up running into a house, which they use the design for, but in the show, it's the house that Bill actually lives in, which isn't the case in the game.
Mm.
It's a house you hide out in the game. And in that house, you find a hanging Frank. And that's your character development for Frank. Frank hung himself because he
Mm.
was unhappy with Bill. They did a huge deviation there, which is bold. But then you end up getting to the same point B as you did in the game. You get your weapons, you get the vehicle, you find the vehicle in the home with the car battery. So it all ended up going to the same place ultimately for Joel and Ellie. But there was so much more emotion put into it, and you understand this is a far better way to do it.
Oh yeah, and there was just so much more character development for especially for Frank, since
Right.
in the game you didn't really get to see
Right.
much of Frank.
Right. And Bill lives in the game too. That's the other part,
Yeah, I really enjoyed seeing um, how Bill started and how Frank changed Bill, and
Yes.
for the better,
Yes.
Like that, like it was almost like Frank or like Bill needed Frank in his life without Bill really knowing it
Yeah.
until you know they kind of got to talking and doing whatever it was that they were doing. And obviously there was that scene where Joel and Tess went to go visit and Bill wasn't too happy. Um, but ultimately played out nicely. Because then, Bill and Joel kind of became friends, and Joel knew that he could always come back to Bill whenever he needed a safe place.
Yeah.
And then just oh man, the ending of the show when Frank was like, "Yeah, just slip me some crushed up pills in my wine," and then Bill was like, at first was like, "No, I can't do that." He's like, and then Frank was like, "Please," and then Bill just decides to do the same thing and crush some pills in his, and the way that they kind of just Romeo and Julieted this was
It really was.
was romantic, but at the same time dark, and that's one thing that I don't want to say enjoyed because it sounds kind of messed up, but this whole show is just so dark that I'm glad that they went that way, just
Yeah.
because. But then the ending, the shot where they're kind of zooming out and showing Ellie and Joel driving away, it ended off happy, even though you knew that behind the camera was Bill and Frank's dead body.
Yeah.
Which I enjoyed them. Like if they would have done it the other way, I don't think I would have enjoyed the ending as much.
Yeah, because it was a love story and it stayed consistent with that.
Right.
That's what I really liked
Right.
about that choice of the window. And the other part of this is the fact that this just, I mean, these are some of the best performances I've seen on television. I mean, what Nick
Oh yeah.
Offerman did in this episode is Bill. He was perfect casting for Bill, but he had so many more layers than he did in the game here. And he pulled it off
Ogres have
so
layers.
perfectly. He pulled it off so well, man. I'm telling you. Like he was so good, man, and he's gonna sweep at the Emmys. I'm telling you, but I mean he's gonna win something. I mean I can almost guarantee it, man. But he was so amazing in this episode, and
The Last of Us is gonna win a nice bit of stuff at Emmys. I think. Like
yeah,
this is just the best bit of television that I've probably seen in a very long time.
it's pretty great.
This is just honestly cinematically beautiful. Story wise is amazing. I mean, just the whole thing is just
Yeah.
hats off to these people because they're absolutely killing it right now.
Yeah, that's the other thing about this episode, man. It was just so cinematic. I mean, they captured all these shots just so perfectly. Like I felt like I was watching a really good A24 movie, you know, because it was just like captured that way and the way it played and it was a slow
Yeah,
burn,
honestly,
but it was
like the
compelling.
the whole like area they lived in, like the houses and them kind
Yeah,
of living together. It almost reminded me of like Coda in a way.
right.
Like the area they lived in and how they lived and all, like it just, yeah, again, like you said, it reminded me of like an A24 movie, and it was just so
Right.
beautiful. I
It
loved it.
was. It was amazing the way that this was shot. And hats off to Peter Horr who did this. I mean, who directed this one. And I like that he decided to. I mean, he was going by the scripts, obviously, but he really chose to do something different. I think a lot,
Oh, and then
even with the shooting style.
the other scene that really got to me too was when Ellie found the suicide note and she was reading it
Yes.
off, and then she stopped, and Joel like snatched it from her and read that it said Tess, and he gets like even colder again. It was great.
Which
There's
this
some great acting there.
it parallels, and I think people will notice. I mean, it really does parallel Frank's suicide note in the game, and but it's just it gave it so much more meaning and so much more impact, and really becomes the driving force for Joel moving forward, which I think is amazing the way that was played. You're right, and that was without that moment. I mean, that moment is what makes everything else count. That note, I think, you know what I mean. Everything that came before really counts. Yes, they used Frank and Bill as a conduit to show this timeline of this pandemic, but on the other hand, the show's focused on Joel and Ellie, and without that note, everything that comes before doesn't matter as much. It's not as impactful. It
Right.
doesn't mean as much. It's not this. They don't become the driving force for Joel in this kind of weird way, this inadvertent way. And I really like how they did that. It was brilliant. And then you kind of go down to the basement, you see the radio, they kind of dive into that. And you understand now a lot more about that. And it just all kind of came together. And then to me, when this episode ends, is when The Last of Us really starts, if that makes sense. Like that, this was like, to me, the first three episodes were, it's like the prologue. You know what I mean?
I was gonna say,
In a
it's
really
like
good book.
the first, it's like the beginning of us, and now it's the last of us. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Because it started off with more people, and now it's
Yes.
really just down to Joel and Ellie. So the first two was, well, I guess the first three is the beginning of us, and then after that, it's actually the last of us.
Yeah, 100%. I agree with that. And I think that is one of the things, that is the exact thing that really separates the show from the game, because the game feels like it's all The Last of Us in a way.
Right.
But when you watch the show, they really decided to make it feel like it was adapted from this great American novel in a way, where it's like you
Right.
get this prologue, you go into like it's like the fucking Hobbit or something.
I was
It's
gonna say,
amazing.
it's like the first three episodes are just introducing all the characters, given kind of going through their history, their
Yeah.
backstory, and all this other stuff. But now we're actually just getting to the actual good stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. And without that other stuff, the good stuff just doesn't matter, and
Exactly.
that's
Right.
what I
Yeah.
think it
I mean,
just makes it amazing.
and that's just what makes a prologue so good.
Yeah.
Is without the character development and all that, the rest of it just doesn't really work.
Yeah. And I could really see, and I haven't watched it, I know you did, but I could see how Craig Mazin would be a great fit for Chernobyl. And I like that
Oh, yeah. Oh my God, man. He kind of took the same inspiration from
right.
Chernobyl and did the same thing here. He did like the same stuff where he kind of like introduced in the first couple episodes like the characters and stuff, and then after that just really went
Right
all
into it.
out with the
Yeah.
rest of the episode. Yeah, he really took a lot of inspiration from Chernobyl for this show. I
Well,
can tell.
when he dives into the history of The Last of Us, he treats it like it's a real event. So I could see why he'd be perfect to direct
Chernobyl,
or to
exactly,
make
yeah.
something that is an actual real event. But I like that he gives this story that same treatment. It really feels like he's diving into real history here. This doesn't feel phoned in. This is another thing that separates it.
It almost makes it seem like that like this is its own franchise like Star Wars that has like multiple books
Right.
and comics
Right.
that they're really diving deep into.
Yeah, and 100%. And it could be. That's the thing, but you gotta be careful about how you do it. But you're right. You need the history, the world building to feel real in order to make that happen. And he really treats it like it's real, and everything just stays extremely grounded here. And he never, the show never shies away from that. So I think just that I like that this is like, I like that Neil Druckmann on his own creating The Last of Us. Obviously, he had a team of collaborators at Naughty Dog, but Neil Druckmann is the crux there, and like I like that Neil Druckmann, he creates Last of Us, and it's amazing. He's an amazing storyteller, but that extra little element of Craig Mazin just adds so much more to it. It's the coolest duo I think in television history at this point, because I've just never seen it. I'd never seen it play so perfectly this way.
You got Craig Mason's Chernobyl influences mixed with Neil Druckmann's actual creation of this mixed
Yeah.
together to make the show is just like the perfect mesh. It's amazing.
Yeah, and Neil Druckmann talks about all the time when he was developing the movie version of this back in the day. It never happened, which I think is for the best. But how
Yeah, I was about to say I feel like this was definitely better as a show than a movie, 100%.
how nervous he felt with collaborating with somebody doing that, as opposed to like Craig Mazin. Every decision he makes for the show that goes by Neil. Like he's not going to make a decision without Neil being on board for it, which I think is just. I think that trust between the two, it shows, man. Like I think it really shows in the product.
For sure.
And that's so important to have, just that great collaboration. Sometimes that's really all it takes, is just working with people you like to work with.
Their chemistry is as good as Joel and Ellie's in the show.
Well, it really is, and I think that, those, it's kind of cool how that parallels, like these creators had to learn to trust each other the way I think Joel and Ellie do in this show.
Yeah.
This episode, the fourth one here, though, this is the first one directed by Jeff Webster. Man, I'll tell you, dude, and like
He did 4 and 5, right?
right. And I'll tell you,
yeah.
man, those two work together so well. We'll get into
yeah.
that. The two episodes, they work together so incredibly well. They're so cohesive.
They really do.
And you could just
really do.
so tell it's the same force behind the two. I like that. I like that they play into each other the best I think any two episodes have so far. And so that really shows that it's the same guy behind it. But the thing I loved about this episode is, like, this is, like I said, this is really where The Last of Us begins. And there are so many things in this one that they stayed very on point with the game. Like the scene in the truck, man, when they're driving and she's pulling out the dirty magazine and all that. Like, that's straight out of the game. It's precise. That stuff was very precise.
Like how she goes, why is it sticky? Joel's like,
100%. It's so funny.
It's so
and
funny.
It's still played in a way that made me laugh in the show. It's still, even though I knew that stuff from the game, I love seeing these two actors do that kind of stuff. And the fact that they brought in her joke book, that's straight out of the game.
I was literally about to say that.
Yeah.
I loved that too. Like, man, that was, yeah. Him just being just so cold every
Yeah.
time she tells those corny jokes it was great.
And the difference, I think, here, the big difference is the way that that was all used. Because the way that the joke book was used here was to really show Joel's mask, that he has
Right.
on, which I love the way that that all kind of tied in because, well, going into the shootout, I love that there's this whole thing with the Raiders kind of taking over this town and taking over Fedra that they're diving into here. That's like very interesting because the way that this is done in the game is very different in the sense that these villains, they're not humanized. In a game, you're shooting people all the time or killing people all the time. Every death in this matters. Every enemy in this matters. Like when the guy is on the ground and he's calling for his mother, oh my God, I felt that, dude. Like, even though he was going after them, you realize this is a human being, though. Like, he has his own story. There's something to him. You don't really get that in the
Mm-hmm.
game. You get a couple guys begging here and there for their lives in the game, but not to this level, not perform to that level. And it's so
I was just saying
unsettling.
another thing that I liked about that scene in particular when essentially Joel's getting choked out, he's about to die,
Yeah.
and then Ellie comes out and like shoots the dude, and Joel's just looking at her. This is where his coldness just wipes completely away.
Yeah.
He's finally like seeing. He's finally like sentimental again and seeing her not as cargo anymore, but like as his own daughter. Basically, like, I will do anything for you. I will literally die for you. It's like his coldness just completely wiped away from inside of him, and he's finally like actually seeing her as like a human being and not just
Right.
as cargo,
Well,
which I
yeah.
really really liked seeing.
Well, he's seeing her as a scared young child, and I
Mm-hmm.
think that brought some stuff back for him. I really do. I don't
It,
know.
it, it, he almost sees his own daughter in Ellie in a way.
I think that there's that for sure, but I don't know if I go as far as you do where he looks at her as family yet. But I do
Not as
think
family, but
it's,
like more of like human
yeah.
nouns and not cargo anymore.
And I only point that out because they do have that line where she says, "I'm not family," and he says, "No, you're cargo." I do think that she's still cargo, but he is seeing the human
That
being
was
in that
that
cargo.
was but to be fair, that was before the shootout when they say that.
Yes, 100%.
I feel like right as soon as that shootout happened, that's where that kind of just all went away.
But I
And he's
think
like seeing her now more as a human being and not as
I
cargo.
do think he's seeing her as a way for him to have purpose right now, for sure. Like, I
Yeah.
think that that's definitely stripped away, like that idea of her just being the cargo. I agree with you 100% on that. Like, that's definitely my assessment as well. He's starting to show her, how to hold a gun and things like that. He's apologizing to her for what she had to go through. And I like that she's even kind of got her own little mask on when she's trying to act like she wasn't scared, but you saw she was. And Joel saw that 100%. And the fact that he's recognizing that she shouldn't have had to have gone through any of this is so important to what happens in the future of the story, I think. And I love that they're setting a lot of this stuff early. The other thing that they planted in this episode earlier than it got planted into in the game, and they made them even more significant, was the idea of Sam and Henry. You got this character, Kathleen, who's after
Mm,
Henry for some reason, and we find out why later, obviously, but and this is kind of why these two episodes ended up being so cohesive, is that thread of Sam and Henry, which was incredible to set up
yeah,
here.
basically getting getting their perspective in up until the point of the ending of episode 4.
Right, 100%. And the thing is like, it's brilliant the way that this is done because, Ellie mentions, and this is another addition from the game. Well, number one, there was the moment with the joke where she's really starting to break down Joel's walls quite a bit, I think. And you're really starting to see him pull off that mask of this tough guy and just start to be a human being too. And he's laughing with Ellie. And I thought that was such a great
Right.
moment of humanity. This is what I mean when they're taking an element from the game, but making it better. They're enhancing it. They're taking this joke book, but using it for this human element and this purpose that means so much.
Right.
But then on the same hand, you move on from that. And really, there's like no effect in this episode, which I love as well. That was another thing that I really enjoyed. Just like showing this humanity and these characters that had to come first and foremost. But moving on from that, you do get Sam and Henry who break in, and they're holding a gun to him. And if you haven't played the game, you're like, who the hell are these guys? And I thought it was just such a great way to end on a cliffhanger too for the new audience to this. It was really cool, and then the old audience is obviously getting excited at the same time. So you get these two dynamics in that moment for sure. But I like that Joel, because there was this mention of him being deaf in his right ear. And if you notice, he tried to fall asleep on his left ear, woke up on
But he
the
fell
other
asleep
ear.
on his right.
Right. Yeah, 100%. Woke up on the other ear, and that's what.
And really looking at episode 5, when they were sneaking up on them, they were pretty quiet when they were walking in. They didn't really make much noise when they're so like even if he was on the left side,
Yeah,
I don't think he would have been able to hear it.
Yeah, 100%. And that's where you kind of we can smoothly transition to the next one, because it is the same story.
Now, that old white guy, that was the one that got shot
Yes.
in episode 4. The one that was with Henry and Sam.
Yes. 100%. Edelston, I guess is his name, as we found out, Dr. Edelston. And so that was, you're really seeing the same story kind of play out over again through the Henry and Sam side of it now.
By the way, I need that sketchbook that Sam had, bro, because it's literally just one piece of paper they can use over and over again, bro. I just need that.
It's so good. It's so good.
It's so practical.
I thought it was a real good, smart decision though to use in the show.
Also, I saw a video. I think it was today. If it was either today or yesterday, after watching episode 5. Oh no, it was the little inside the episode that they play after each episode, where they're kind of talking about how like Henry and Ellie, they both kind of like picked up ASL really fast, and like the whole crew was so intrigued that even they started picking up ASL, which was really cool. It's really cool to see, people get so into different things, like someone who's deaf that has to use ASL, they want to learn as well, because it's like the inclusion is just so heartwarming. It's great.
What I thought was really great that they did here in this episode, and also by making Sam deaf, is this whole other element, which I like that.
Which the kid actor
was actually deaf. I like it as an element, but it's not at the forefront of everything. It's just a piece of it, and I like that they made that change.
Oh, and the chemistry between Ellie and Sam, amazing. They just have such great chemistry.
100%, and so did Henry and Sam, and that was important. And to make them, I never thought I'd fall in love. I like those characters in the game, but I never thought I'd fall in love with them the way the show made me fall in love with those characters. They are likable from the get-go.
They got me hella emotional.
Oh yeah,
in that
dude.
one scene.
Oh, dude, 100%. We'll get to all that, but yeah, dude, it's a crazy, unsettling, emotional episode for sure. But you start with like this. I mean, there's a lot of levity in the beginning though, because you got Ellie. Like the stuff that cracked me up was, Joel sounding threatening, and she's like, "That's just his voice. He has an asshole voice. Tell him it's gonna be fine, Joel." And he's just like, "It's gonna be great.
It's gonna be great." And then Ellie's like, "What the fuck?
Yeah,
come on,
dude, come on." Yeah, and I love that. I thought that was a real funny moment. It continued on the relationship between Joel and Ellie, but also building out Sam and Henry and making them likable presence in the show. And I like what I love about Henry in the show that I just don't think was as big of an element in the game, his honesty. He's not pulling any punches with Sam. He's also not pulling any punches with Joel. When he's like, "That's your great ass plan." Oh, that's my dicey ass plan. He was so honest about that.
My dicey as fuck plan.
which is realism just made him that much more likable in the show as opposed to the game. I also really like that he's on, like when he's honest with Sam, it's like Sam asked straight up, "Is the doctor dead?" He's like, "Probably, yeah." He doesn't pull any punches at all, and this is part of what.
And then whenever he comes clean to Joel about why Kathleen's after him, that he sold Kathleen's brother to get the treatment for his brother's leukemia.
Yeah.
I mean, he's just straight. He's just coming straight with Joel, because I mean, he almost kind of sees Joel as like this high and up guy, kind of almost threatening, because he saw what Joel did to those raiders. That he's almost like, well, I mean, what's the point in lying to this guy, because he's ultimately helping us get the hell out of here.
Yeah,
So he's like, well, I need to be as honest as I can because what's
100%.
the point in lying to this guy?
Right.
So yeah, I really did enjoy that.
And what I love so much about this, and by the way, I did want to point out this is my favorite episode of the show so far. Easily,
I was gonna say that this is literally my favorite one,
easily,
100%.
easily. They
And
just,
I'll get to the scene that especially made me love it so much.
oh yeah, yeah, for
Like
sure.
it comes up here, yeah.
But they're talking about these tunnels, and one of the deviations they took here is, in the tunnels when they're going through them, there's infected down there in the game. Here they kind of took that out, but they made up for it later. Believe me.
That's yeah,
But
exactly.
what I love about these moments is they gave time for more humanity. They showed this connection between Sam and Ellie, which you're right, that chemistry between those two was unbelievable, and it just made
They literally bonded over a comic, which is great. I loved it.
I
It
mean,
really brought out the nerdiness in me.
I mean, yeah, 100%. I mean, that young boy's laugh is so adorable too, man. He just, oh my, he steals your heart in this thing, and you love it.
His and when he's laughing and smiling, it's just his facial reaction is just so cute and lovable. It's like
100%.
he's just so likable.
Amazing young actor, and like honestly, like a new talent that I hope gets more opportunities after this, man. Because man, he's so good, but what I also thought I thought because he was so good, this is the best episode I saw Bella Ramsey into. Like, I think this is her best performance as Ellie to date. Like, she showed so much range, and Sam elevated that performance so much in this.
For sure.
This
It was really also the happiest that I had ever seen Ellie in the entire show as well, because she found someone really close to her age that she could, kind of play with, bond over stuff, kind of have a friend relationship with.
Yeah. It was important to show.
It really was. And you're not wrong. I mean, this was definitely her best performance. The range between, her happiness, her sadness, her scaredness, like everything. Like her range was just she used it all in this episode, and it was absolutely my favorite performance from Bella Ramsey. To the date so far in this show.
Yeah. There's a part I'm going to get to later that she just absolutely blew me away, and we'll talk about that here in a little bit. But you got this other element though. They're building out the Kathleen Perry story about what happened to her brother, and again, they're so insignificant, but they made them so significant. You know what I mean? They humanized every fucking bad guy in this thing, and they continue to do that, which I love so much. And by the way, the gentleman who plays Perry is Tommy in the game. He's Tommy in the video game. So I like that they kept him here for a nice little role there. And it was, I say little, but really he became really significant. You understood his position by the end of this thing.
Yeah, I really like him in this show. He's
absolutely,
actually
he was really good in this show. Man, it shows you, dude, that those game actors are very good performers, and they did so well here. And I like Kathleen's sort of personality too, even though she pissed me off, got under my skin.
The same.
She also she gets under your skin because she's got this like sort of light-hearted voice, but she's so evil in the inside right now. She's so full of rage.
It's like she's intimidating, but at the same time she's not. It's like she looks so innocent and pure and like nice, but at the same time she's playing like this badass. So it's like she's it's weird. It's a weird feeling.
She's got vengeance in her heart, man, and that's scary. I think that's what makes her kind of scary in this, honestly. But then you end up getting to the moment where they're walking and they finally get out of these tunnels, so this neighborhood was definitely designed exactly like the game, this cul-de-sac that they used. But the difference was in the game it was during the day. Also, the sniper was straight out of the game. That's a whole thing you got to do as Joel in the game, is try to get around, get up there, get your position on that sniper. But one of the decisions that they made that was different, this guy is an old dude, and Joel does not want to kill him. But the guy wanted out, dude. You could tell he's a seasoned warrior. He wanted out, dude. And he was like, I give up. And so he goes for it, and Joel shoots him down, which I'm pretty sure the old guy just wanted at that point anyway. But the reason I like that they gave reasoning to him missing them every time is because he's going blind. You can see it, man. He's not the best sniper in the world, dude. But he gets up there and like ends up taking the guy down as the guy wanted. But then he ends up using the sniper, and this is just like the game in this instance. except now we have this extra element of these raiders who show up and they're humanized now. So now that adds a whole new position, number one. And it feels like all the infected that came in the game beforehand, they just delayed to one big moment.
Bro, and the way Joel took out the truck in the front and just like it just blew up. It was so cool. I absolutely loved that.
Amazing.
That house and it was amazing.
Amazing. And then they set up so well that these things were underground, right? And like that Fedra had driven them underground a long time ago. And
Which
here they all
were,
come at once.
which Kathleen and Perry were suspected of when Perry showed Kathleen that room and that the floor was kind of like tumbling up and down. They kind of suspected that it was going to be infected, but they just like closed it off. He's like, we'll just worry about that later. We got to, my top priority is Henry right now. We'll just leave 100%. It till as soon as we kill Henry, we can come back and deal with this room. This is what go ahead.
Well, I let me cut in before you get to that, because I know exactly what you're going to start talking about here, but trust me. But what I think is like, I want to cut in just real quick, because I think what's important about Henry's choices here is he saw earlier that Joel was somebody's dad. He's prepared to let Ellie run off with Henry and trust Joel that Joel will take care of Henry too. I like that. I really like that extra element. It's like Henry's prepared to get captured by Kathleen. And
you mean with Sam? No.
I'm sorry. Henry trusts Joel so much that he's prepared to let Ellie run off with Sam, and he knows because Joel has the father bone, he would also take care of Sam too, and help him. I like that about Henry here, and it was a really interesting decision. Luckily, he gets saved by the bell, so to speak. But go ahead, man. I know you were talking about this.
This is the most cinematically beautiful scene I've probably seen in this show to date.
Biggest action set piece they've had for sure. Yeah.
Of when the infected and clickers come out of the ground. Perfect choice for the camera. It was the most cinematically beautiful shot ever. And when the big boss pops up,
the bloater,
my dude, it was just
amazing.
It was perfection. Honestly, I've played that scene over and over already just because of how beautiful that shot is. Honestly, oh my god, man, it was great. And then you just see all these infected just pop out and just start unloading on all of these raiders. Joel was hitting infected left, right, and center.
I love that.
Like he was a perfect shot because he didn't miss a single one. Saving Ellie literally every single time with his shots. And
except for in the car, Ellie kind of saved herself in that. But
But that's because he couldn't get the bullets through the car. He was trying, but the bullets just wouldn't go through the windows. Then Ellie going and saving Henry and Sam was great. She just stabbed both of them with like no hesitation.
It was amazing.
Getting him out of there, and then oh my gosh, when Kathleen gets jumped by that little clicker, that was. Oh my god, and the bloater, the way he just picks up the dudes and just slams them on the ground, like this dude is like bulletproof. He's like the Hulk, but an infected version. Like, he's literally the strongest mofo out there.
100%. What I love about this, so a couple things. Like I said, they almost like delayed all the infected that came before in the game until this one moment. So that made it a surprise for just the people who played the game, number one. The second thing is the bloaters. We saw our first bloater in the game back with Bill. So I like that they saved it for this moment. And so that was a real incredible way to just introduce this thing, make it feel all the more threatening in this moment for sure. And that this bloater is pretty much impossible to kill, which sometimes it really does feel that way in the game. So they stayed pretty true to that and the design of it. I also love that this is a practical set. This is a neighborhood that they built from the ground up so they could blow it the fuck up. The fire is real. This had to be a tough ass scene to shoot, dude. Like you could see it. The zombies, or not zombies, I said it. See, I made the mistake now, but the infected are real here. I mean, they're real practical people. Now, what they did is this is the one place they used VFX. I listened to the writers talk about this, Neil and Craig, where they were saying like the one thing they did here, they used VFX to almost double the zombie, or here I go, the infected the amount, so like it really did look like a swarm was out there, so they doubled it down with VFX. But they said the company they used was called Weta, which I guess one of the guys that worked for them actually left ILM just to work for this show because he loved the game so much, which is really
Oh,
impressive.
wow.
And he said if they didn't have that lock, like it probably wouldn't have looked as good. But they're like, you can like really try to nitpick it, but the VFX ones and the non-VFX ones, they're indistinguishable. And damn,
They
are they
honestly
right?
they look all the same, bro. I
Yeah,
honestly couldn't even. I honestly, if you wouldn't have told me that they used VFX, I would have just said that they were able to get that many people
yeah, it all
to be
looks
there.
practical. But the fire definitely is practical, and with all these actors on the set, it had to be very difficult to shoot. I can only imagine. But the thing that I really loved about this was like, yeah, going back into the fact that you know Kathleen dies from a child, which is kind of this real sick, kind of twisted moment. But on the same hand, it's like when you listen to what she was saying about children dying, it's almost like,
Yeah, children die all the time. It's like she bit the nail in the coffin. It's like karma hits you.
yeah,
Karma hit you right back. It's like children die all the time, but then you die to a child. It's like
right. Yeah, it's
kind
really
of
interesting.
ironic in a sense.
But she had
Yeah.
this choice to make it out of there, but she couldn't let go of getting,
Henry.
getting
Yeah.
Henry. She couldn't let go of her vengeance, and so that's what ultimately took her at
The
the end
vengeance,
of the day.
yeah, as I say, the vengeance got the best of her.
Which is a very powerful message to put into this thing. This episode is so layered. I can go on all day, but Perry getting his head thrown, like you said, that was just incredible, man.
Oh my
I
god,
mean,
he just got ripped. His head,
whew,
his head just got ripped right
damn,
off.
that
Like
was
Jesus.
unsettling. And I liked him too, and that made it even more upsetting. But hey, I mean, he wasn't in the game. Kathleen wasn't in the game. It made a lot of sense when you saw their ultimate direction and them meeting their demise here. It really made sense as to why they introduced them the way they did. And what I really loved as well, just to kind of throw this out there, is that scene with Ellie in the car, because it gave me the fact it was going back to that like Jurassic Park style horror again, to me, like just that, kid in the car. It's very suspenseful. It's got that like feel to it,
Bro, it
which
had
I
me on the
love
edge of my seat, bro. I
very
swear, I was
much.
like, fuck, what's gonna happen to Ellie? I mean, I know she can't get infected, but it's
Yeah.
still like, dude, what the hell's gonna happen to her?
Yeah. Now this is very important. Now when she did go to save Sam, that happened in the game too, and it's too
He
late.
got infected.
It's too late, man.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, the last 10 minutes of the episode,
This is where I got hella emotional.
pretty spot on to the game though, except for the death aspect. I mean, the conversations with Henry and Joel are pretty close. I mean, but and this,
See, I like how they were finally laughing with each other there at the end in Henry's final moments.
Yeah.
They were finally having a good time together, laughing it off, kind of just almost understanding each other and
Yeah.
understanding why they are doing what they're doing.
yeah. Now I knew it was coming, but Sam writing out the message. Do you think you're still inside when you were infected?
If you're a human inside, you're still you
Right.
inside. If you're a monster, yeah.
Right. And then
That's when I because I hadn't played the game, but that's when I suspected in my head. I'm like,
you're like, oh shit. Yeah. And they,
Sam's a. Well, and then instantly he pulls up his pant leg, and you can see that he
I could just-
got infected, bro.
oh, I watched this with somebody who hadn't played the game, but the gasp that came out of that person was wow. That's
Dude,
all I'm gonna say.
my jaw dropped. I was
Yeah.
like, oh shit.
And then it gets real
And you know
tense.
what? And you know what? I was just saying, what makes it even worse is the fact that, like, emotionally worse is the fact that Ellie tried to save him with her own blood.
Yeah.
That's what really got me.
The thing is if she'd have killed him, it would have been avoided. She had the knife to do it, and she
But I feel
didn't.
like Henry still would have offed himself.
Well, it just shows
Either that, or he would have tried to kill Ellie.
right, which meant, that's the thing I was thinking about there in this moment, seeing it in the show this time around is like. But the other thing is in the game, Sam doesn't actually confess to Ellie. They have the same conversation, and Sam just reveals, he looks at his bite, and that's how it's revealed to the audience of the game, not showing Ellie. So I like this added layer of their
So how does that? Who kills Sam in the game?
oh, it's Henry. That goes down the same.
Oh, okay.
Because he
okay.
still wakes up
But-
and tries to attack Ellie in the game, but
Oh.
she doesn't see the bite. That's all. Just you, the audience, or the game player does. But what I loved so much about this really quick is like it answers the question to the audience doing it this way in the show: can Ellie's blood just cure? And obviously that it's not that simple. And I
It's
like
not.
that they
It's
use
not
that.
just her blood. Yeah, they have to like
Yeah,
make. They're gonna have to like mix a bunch of stuff together with
yeah.
her blood.
But it really shows you Ellie's heart early on. The fact that she wouldn't just kill Sam. You know, she does
Sam.
have
Yeah. Well,
humanity to her.
Yeah, I was gonna say she had such a nice, amazing relationship with Sam that she
Yeah.
didn't want to just kill him.
Yeah, now let me dive into this really quick, okay? Because this is the moment I wanted to talk about big time. Because, dude, so first of all, probably the freakiest moment in the show was seeing Sam turn and like attack her. But
Yo, bro, I got hella scared. Jesus
the
Christ.
reason it's so effective here, though, and even more so than the game, is Bella Ramsey's performance. Her screams were excruciating. Like
Yeah.
that was a scared child, very freaked out, and like and disturbed child right there. Like she was disturbed by what was going on at the same time of being attacked and scared. So that was like she
Yeah, I
like
feel
threw
like
all
yeah,
that out
like
there.
I
It
was
was
gonna,
incredible.
I was gonna say it's like I find it weird that she um like she knew he was infected, so it was almost weird to me at first the fact that she screamed even though she knows she can't be infected. But I think the reason why she did is because she thought that Sam was healed. And as soon
Yeah.
as he turns and she sees that he's still infected, she gets scared because she's like, "Well, why didn't it work?"
She's
So,
disturbed by her
so yeah,
friend,
yeah,
attacking her too. That disturbed
right,
her so
yeah,
much, and she's scared to death. And oh my God, Bella Ramsey stole my heart here. Like she really did. This is the best performance I've seen her give, and
yeah,
and it was
100%.
it was impressive, dude. That screaming she was given. I mean, it was wild. And then Henry shoots Sam just like in the game. Joel tries to take the gun from him, just like in the game. Afterward, because he points it at Joel, just like in the game. And then Henry just makes a decision to kill himself just like in the game. And
Because I mean, he really has nothing else to live for at this point.
but the other thing that also made that more infected or more even though
More infected.
more impressive, even though in the game you do see the blood come out the other side of his head. I will say that. And in the show you didn't. But you got to see Ellie's reaction when it happened. That was the deviation I really liked.
Well, when Henry offed himself.
The second he shot himself, they show Ellie's reaction.
Yeah.
That was more, again, impressive and impactful than the moment in the game just showing the bullet go through his head.
Yeah.
Even though that's
It really
impactful
was, 'cause
too.
she really sold that, honestly.
But seeing
She
it through a
this
child's
episode
eyes. Whew.
this episode really sold Ellie
Yeah.
and Bella Ramsey's performance.
And those
her as an
tears
actress,
coming out was
honestly.
like, dude, it was unbelievable. Like I bought that was somebody who just saw
It
somebody
was
kill
crazy.
themselves.
You know what? She mentions in a video with Pedro like what she uses to cry. It's really cool. What she uses one of those like mint nose things, where she kind of like
Yeah.
sniffs it a bunch and then like it's really funny.
I think I saw that interview. Yeah, it was funny, but because I think Pedro wanted to borrow him for next season, but
Yeah.
which would be smart. But not that Pedro can't pull it off. Just it'd be smart. Obviously,
I mean, he's done it.
Obviously,
He's
it
done
works.
it in the show
Yeah,
already.
absolutely. Obviously, though, that works for her. And like, dude,
Right.
yeah, I bought that was a child who just watched a grown man commit suicide. Like, I bought that in the moment, and it was so real to me. Like, it felt
This
so real.
this what's crazy is this the burial scene that comes next almost reminds me of Supernatural when they bury like
Really,
their friends.
I
and
think
their,
I think of Goodfellas
I mean,
every time I see that. But,
they usually burn their friends so that their spirits can't come and haunt them or whatever.
Yeah.
But they usually do bury, then burn. Well, they dig up a hole, put the bodies, burn it, and then close the hole. But it really did just remind me of the way that Joel and Ellie were kind of just standing over the bodies that were buried. It really did remind me of Sam and Dean from Supernatural when they usually bury bodies and stuff. It was I don't know, it was really weird.
No, fair enough. I thought that this was a fantastic addition to show the burial because I do recall in the game it being implied that they were going to be buried, but I do know that they never actually showed that burial in the game for sure. And showing this was even more impactful. It was a nice addition because Ellie throws the what was it, magic
Oh my god.
slates on the ground where it says I'm
When she,
sorry,
yeah, I'm sorry. Oh my gosh, that part, that just, oh.
and then which way's
And then,
west?
oh, and then Joel just, staring at the, the buried bodies, just kind of just staring there, being like,
Yeah,
that's when he's like, I need to do whatever I need to do to make sure that Ellie survives, and that I don't have to do this to Ellie one
wait,
day. It really got me right then and there.
100%. But you know the other part of it that struck me is Ellie at this point in time is trying to be what Joel was in the beginning, where now she's trying to be cold. She throws the thing on the ground, which way's west?
Which way's
And
west?
Joel
Yeah.
sees himself in her, I think, anyway, and is thinking, I don't want her to do what I was doing in the beginning of this. I don't want her to go down that path now and just lose her humanity. I'm going to
Yeah,
keep that there.
and also just wants to make sure that he does not to do that to her one
Yeah.
day.
Yeah. Now, this to me is really when
I
Joel's
feel, and I
walls
feel
got
like,
broken. Yeah.
and she also just wants to get to where she needs to be as soon as possible, so that they can find a cure for this
Yeah.
disease.
Well,
Because I mean,
she's
she
tired
tried
of
to
this
save
too,
she
you know?
yeah, she tried to save Sam and she couldn't. And so at this point, she just wants to be the hero, basically, at
Yeah.
this point, and be able to save as many lives as possible.
Yeah. In the game, they pretty much, I mean, the Sam and Henry stuff happens and they move on pretty quickly. I think in this show, and I think
In
I've heard
this
the
one,
writers,
they're not going to.
I think it's
They're
going
not
to
going
affect
to.
them later
Yeah.
on. And I like
Oh,
that they're going to
100%.
use that as an element to carry over
Because
because,
that's just gonna, it just makes them more humane and not so
yeah.
much video game character.
Well, yeah, this show, I think the common theme tonight, anyway, with the show, what we've been talking, it's humanity. That's the common thread throughout the show. It's dealing with humanity. It's a study on humanity, how you can lose it, how you can regain it, and I like that common thread that's shown throughout the entire show, and it's used very effectively, and it's impressive, man. It's really impressive, and that's the part that keeps the show going, is that little bit of humanity, that study on humanity, and seeing it through all different types of entities, not just Joel and Ellie like you do in the game. Like this, they're carrying it throughout a lot of people, and it's so fascinating to me that that's the extra Craig Mazin. You know what I mean? That's the extra dose of Craig Mazin that the game didn't have. That's why it's working. Because he understands it, but also knows how to elevate the material. It's not just copying the source material. It's not a copy and paste by any means. It's
Right.
the broad strokes are there, and it's covering the same story overall, while giving you this extra dose of humanity and this extra dose of being grounded. And it's a fascinating character study, really, when you think about it, amongst many characters. Yeah, I don't know, man, but dude, I can't wait for next week. I don't want to give away anything for anybody, but the preview looks good.
There's the preview looks really, really, really good. Honestly, I'm super excited for the. I mean, like we've said, I mean, I feel like they just one up each episode every time, and that just gives me so much hope for this next episode. I honestly can't wait.
Yeah,
I think it's gonna be a really good episode.
yeah,
We're in for a real treat, I think.
I will say, without giving anything away, all this like build up of this humanity, I think we're gonna really see that come to a head next week if they follow anything like the game and in a big way. I think that we're going to start to open new doors for the humanity of these characters, and that's really gonna be it's gonna all kind of come to fruition, I think, in this next episode in a big way. So that I'm excited to see for sure. They almost have to do it next week. If not, I promise the week after it will. But it has to by the week after if they don't carry it into next episode, what I think they're gonna do, which is a significant moment that I won't spoil for anybody, but I'm super excited, man. I think next week is easily, at least in terms of the human story, going to be better than this week was, and that's surprising.
Oh yeah, I can tell just from the preview alone that it's going to be
The human story, I think,
humane.
is going to be very powerful, more powerful than even this week possibly. We'll see how it's executed. I think that's always how it's kind of come down. I never thought the Bill episode would be one of my favorites, but look at me now. You know what I mean? Like they
Honestly,
execute things in ways that I never thought.
it's one of my favorites. Human story wise, that's definitely my favorite.
You know, every time they kind of backtrack a little bit with some of these characters, I want to point this out. Every time they've done this in the show, they've backtracked with these characters, giving you more backstory, and they start to spend a lot of time on that. In my mind, I'm always like, I don't know why I do it in my head. I just got to learn to trust the showrunners now. But in my head, every time an episode starts and they're showing me this backstory that wasn't in the game, I'm like, they're not going to have enough time to hit everything. And they impress me every single time. And then they do it in a way that's better than I thought it could ever be. It's unreal how well the show is doing. And yeah, dude, we have to see the ending before we can make the judgment call. But at this point, this is, some of the best television in a very long time. And
I'm gonna say it. I'll say this. I've said it. I'll say it again. Cinematically, that shot of the infected coming out of the ground was like, I think my favorite so far in the show.
Yeah, I agree.
That shot was just so beautiful, honestly.
It was threatening, it was horrifying, and it was a lot. I mean, it was a lot to take on as a task to get a shot like that. Like I said, I don't think anything about that whole action set piece was easy, but that shot alone,
not at all.
Yeah, they really
that shot
went
alone
for
makes
it.
that scene just the best. Honestly,
They really went for it, man. I mean, this is unbelievable. I genuinely, every time an episode ends, I get goosebumps because it's this material I love so much, and like it's being done better than I could have imagined.
Talking about this, bro.
100%, dude.
I get goosebumps just talking. Yeah, it's crazy.
It's wild to me, like how well this is actually going, and yeah. But
I can't wait for all. I can't wait for all the episodes to come out so I can just watch it from beginning to end, just in one smooth watch.
I think in my mind, I'm just waiting because I'm like, one of these has to suck at some point, right? Like it surprises
not going to.
me.
It's never.
Doesn't seem like it, right? And I think they've just done a really consistent job here. Honestly, I mean, hats off to Neil and Craig.
Best video game adaptation ever. That's a fact.
I think so far we can say that. Yes, I think it's easily so far the best video game adaptation we've ever seen, and it's
100%.
It's a respect for its source material, but it's not afraid to take chances. You know, that I think it's that perfect balance of that.
And when it takes chances, it does it so brilliantly and perfectly. It's great.
But you know that is because of Neil Druckmann. That's because of that trust that I was talking about that between him and Craig, and that's because Neil said, we will only deviate if it's better than what I had in my mind." And
it has worked.
Mm-hmm.
It has.
I mean, I wonder too, like, this is something I wanted to bring up because does this, A, spin off a lot of other video game adaptations that try to follow the model? And then B, is this because I think that this is the first show that we have had that we can call pure horror survival. It's not a horror show. It's like horror survival. Like, that is the genre of the show to me. Like, there's that extra element of the survival element. So, B, does it spin off a whole slew of those? I feel like it definitely will. Or shows that at least try to tackle that genre. Because I think that this is going to be a big deal. You know, like, the fact
There's definitely going to be companies and like script writers and people that are going to try and spin off this idea and try to make it, into their own... for sure, because I feel like this has opened up so many different possibilities now for TV shows and the horror survival aspect.
Yeah.
Which is crazy to think that something in this year is not going to open up so many different opportunities for other people.
Right.
Which is great. Honestly, I would love to see more.
Well,
I'm here for it. Honestly,
the horror survival aspect has been it's a proven method that works in video games. I mean, you look at even Resident Evil, their worst games are the ones that strayed away from horror survival. That's when they piss fans off. It's proven to just use that because it's such a great tension builder and people love that. They love that roller coaster. It works in video games. We've seen it on film. I would argue Jaws and Jurassic Park are horror survival films. and Quiet Place, horror survival. You know, that's it's like its own little niche of horror.
I mean, World War Z, that's horror survival.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, I didn't even think of that one. But it's a proven method in film. It works
Yeah,
when you
it
do it
really
right,
is.
when you understand that extra element of the survival in it. I mean, there are some that I feel like the ones that do it wrong, we just don't even consider to be horror survival or survival horror because it does it wrong. It doesn't understand what survival horror is.
I would almost even say that Supernatural is horror survival in a way.
I haven't seen the show to be able to speak to it, but okay. But
There's a lot of, it's not horror to the aspect of like World War Z, where it's like
Sure.
really actually horror because there's zombies, but there is like horror to the point where like there's things that jump, there's like jump scares and like a lot of horror stuff. In terms of like the category of horror, there's ghosts and demons and all these other kinds of horror characters, and it's survival in the aspect that Sam and Dean, the main characters, are trying to survive in a world where there's just a bunch of horror.
Yeah.
So I would almost say that that's like a horror survival esque show.
yeah, again, I just haven't seen it speak to it, but it sounds like it fits the bill. I mean, I'm just saying, like, I just think on television we just maybe haven't had enough of it or enough successful horror or
Yeah,
survival horror
I just
like this.
besides Supernatural and The Last of Us, I can't really think of any other horror survival shows. I mean, we've seen it again, like you said, a lot in film, but in terms
I think
of
more
TV,
so. It's been proven to work.
yeah, in TV we haven't. I mean, again, like I said, Supernatural and Last of Us are the only ones that I can really think of
Yeah.
off the top of my head.
And again, proven to work when the people making it understand it and understand how to make it work.
Again, yeah.
That's,
I mean, look how successful Supernatural has been.
yeah, yeah.
And now even The Last of Us too, like it works when it's done right, and the directors and the person who created it have such a good working relationship.
100%, 100%. You have to have that. You have to know how to craft it, man. I mean, you have to have.
Yeah.
That has to be a tool that in your toolbox, to be able to craft something like this. But the thing that the other part of that question, does this spawn off more video game adaptations on TV? Because I think it'd be a mistake not to. I'm not saying they're all
I
gonna be
think
good,
so.
but-
I just exactly that's what I was gonna
Yeah.
say. I think it will. I just, whether they're all successful or not, that's where I don't know. It'll all depend on the relationship that the director and the creator have.
Well,
just
we're-
like in this. It's The Last of Us.
We'll have a ton of corporate people with that old school mentality of, well, Last of Us works, so our thing has to work if it's the same genre, and that's just not how it works. But
See, that's just not how showbiz works.
right. But I bet you any money that we do get more that are better than we did before.
Oh, 100%.
Because of this. I mean,
I think people. I think I was gonna say. I think companies will look at The Last of Us and try and do the same. Find
yeah.
a director and the create like a director that'll coexist with the creator to the point where they can have a working relationship and be able to work it out and make something not as good but still good in terms of adaptation.
I mean, give us a good Resident Evil. I mean, adaptation. We haven't had it, man. Not one that's been true to what those games were. You know what I mean? And those were like.
I feel like that would also that's a game that would work better as a series too, not a.
That's what I mean.
Movie.
Yeah, 100%. Just give it. It's been too long. We haven't had it yet, and they've tried so many times, man. They even tried to do the series and it didn't work. It's a shame, but I think like with the Last of Us proves, if you understand the material, you can actually do something different with it and still make it work. You just have to keep the spirit and the broad strokes. If you keep the spirit and the broad strokes of the source material, it works. And I think that's one of the things about this, though, that a lot of other video game adaptations or a lot of other video games don't have. There are a lot that do. But the fact that this is the source material is already a great story on its own helps a lot. I mean, if you didn't have Neil Druckmann creating the original game, you wouldn't have the show as good as it is anywhere near it, because the source material is already that good. But
facts
to elevate it from there I thought that would have been an impossible task till I saw this show, you know, and they just have every time. And it's unbelievable, man. I think that they're just doing wonders with this thing, but I'm blown away. I'm so blown away.
Honestly, same.
Yeah, dude. Look, I mean, it's too early to grade it, so we're not going to do that, but we probably will come back after the finale and try to do something like that. We'll be like, yeah, and then we'll just come in and just we'll probably call it a masterpiece at that point. Who knows? But
Honestly, yeah.
I'm almost willing to now, but I'm not going to. I'm going to hold off because I've been burnt before. I've been burnt before everybody. So, but yeah. Anyway, I love the.
I just don't see that happening.
I don't
for
see
this
it
show,
either,
if I'm being
man.
honest.
I love the consistency here.
Really don't.
The consistency is impressive, and it's something that's unfortunately rare in these types of shows. But yeah, dude, look, all right, guys,
And
look,
just in TV, in TV in general, if I'm being honest, you just like you don't really get consistency like this really in TV nowadays, which really it's really sad to see, if I'm being honest.
it is sad, but yeah, dude, you got to have that source material too. I think that's part of the trick. You know what I mean? They got very lucky with this material, like without a doubt. It's helped, but to have the trust in the collaborators they have is another layer, like we said, and yeah, it's working for them so much, man. All right, look, listen, guys, this has been our mid-season review of The Last of Us. It's your turn to tell us how you're feeling about the show so far. And I know that there surprisingly are still people that are naysayers about this. It surprises the hell out of me. But look, I'm willing to hear your thoughts, your opinions, why you think it's not working if it's not. But I'm sure most of you will agree that has been the general consensus is that it is a great show. But I'm just willing to hear opinions all around and keep it civil in the comments, everybody. Before we get out of here, please hit the like button below, subscribe to the channel, leave some feedback in the comment section, share this with your friends, and hit the bell for notifications. Once again, I am Don Martino, and Jose Espinel has joined me today. I appreciate it, bud. Appreciate you taking the time. And where can people find you?
Of course, anytime. As you can see, my socials up here, extract gaming _ on all socials, and on Twitch as well, extract gaming _ with a capital X, capital G. I'm actually streaming today at 7 p.m. EST. So if you guys would like to come check me out, I've got a little special stream today for you guys. So make sure you guys come and tune in. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Yes, absolutely. And this episode was a lot of fun, man. And, you know, it really speaks volumes about the show. I don't think I know we've agreed on stuff before, but I don't think we've ever agreed so much on something like as we have with this show. Honestly, like
that's what I love so much about this show. That's what I love about it so much.
Our opinions match on this one so much, and I think that speaks volumes about how great it actually is. Anyway, guys, look, I've been Don Martino. Please, you can follow me as well as Jose just pointed out. Mine are also above at Dom _Martino_ on Twitter, or Dom _Martino_ official on Instagram. And then you please follow the Extract Media pages as well at Extract Media across Twitter and Instagram. That is much appreciated. Hopefully we get back together for the finale as well. I would love to just do the rest of the season with Jose here. I just think the show is that good. It deserves a podcast episode. Yeah, it's amazing. So, all right, guys, let us know what you think of the show. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel. I already did all that. Forget it. You saw the graphic. You guys are good. Don't worry about it. You've already done it. But if you haven't, make sure you do.
Do it.
All right. We will talk to you guys later. See you.
you.
Ah, I did it.